This podcast is brought to you by People's Food Co-op, a community-owned grocery store in downtown La Crosse, Wisconsin and Rochester, Minnesota, that promotes local farmers and producers through an emphasis on fresh, healthy, sustainable food. Anyone can shop. Everyone is welcome. For more information, visit them online at pfc.coop. This podcast is also brought to you by Trempealeau County Tourism. Whether your idea of fun is bicycling, hiking, or canoeing, afterwards head into the heart of one of their welcoming communities to experience historic architecture, independent shops, and locally owned dining establishments. Visit Trempealeau County Tourism online. Artspire is back with a full weekend of art at the Pump House Regional Arts Center. Enjoy live music from Cloud Cult, Bill Miller, and B2 Winds, plus a fine art fair, interactive art projects, and visual and performing arts. June 10th through 11th. Learn more at artspire.thepumphouse.org. We connect again with Mike Makes, longtime collaborator of La Crosse Local, including the upcoming Cooking with Bo series, garage sessions, and more. Currently, Micheal has his hands full with the Negative Rescue Project. We jump into the Found Photography Project and find out the unique process on uncovering lost, forgotten film. You can find more conversations, food reviews, live music, and events on our website, lacrosselocal.com. I'm Amy.
And I'm Brent.
And this is La Crosse Local.
So the Negative Rescue Project, I've been following along here for the last couple months. What is it about?
So the Negative Rescue Project, I started back in almost a year ago now, back in April. And I started collecting a bunch of film stuff, and a guy gave me a 30-pound box of glass and like film negatives. And pretty much I didn't know what I was going to do with them. I had no connection to them by any means. I ended up going through them, and I found out it was one man's body of work for over a decade, just over a decade. And it was really interesting. A lot of it I thought had like some kind of historical value. And after going through more and more of it, I noticed he went to places like Niagara Falls, Duluth. He went all around Wisconsin. There is a box where he goes to California. I just started to realize that it was really interesting. Nobody had ever seen this work before. And it's of a time that there aren't a ton of photos for because it was early photography. So I kind of took it upon myself to learn how to restore both the film and the dry plate negatives and kind of research who this man was.
For the sort of novice like myself, I guess, with photography. So when you say glass, what does that mean? Are we talking like the big cameras with the big lights? Like, what are we talking about here?
So I actually have a photo of one of his cameras, and they're not super huge. It's a 4x5 glass plate, 4x5 inches. So they are big. They're very fragile. They go through a slightly different process than regular film. I don't know how to develop them, actually. I've never actually had to develop glass plates, but one day that might be an aspiration. They're just very fragile and hard to deal with. So for me, I'm not at that level.
Just checking out the images that have come out of this. I mean, it looks like there's at your website, an offshoot at mikemakes.com. There seems to be hundreds of these. What was the sort of impetus for you to kind of dig into this and really kind of like, it looks really intensive. Like you're spending a lot of time kind of piecing these like pieces together.
For me, I don't know. I felt like I needed a hobby over COVID, even though I was already doing other stuff. But this was something where I was going to pass it off to someone else. I was going to give it to archives around the nation, because there was UW of Milwaukee was interested. There was UW-Madison that was interested. The Wisconsin Historical Society was interested. And then like the offshoots like Duluth, Niagara Falls, some other people were interested, but they wanted to tear the whole thing apart, and they wanted to take just what was related to them. And for me, I wanted to keep it all together as one giant body of work. And so that's why I kind of took it over as an undertaking. And it was something for me. I wanted to learn how to be able to restore that stuff in case I ever do shoot glass negatives in the future. It was more of like learning how to use a scanner. That's kind of a boring task, but at the same time, I was already scanning in my own film negatives. I had to learn how to like calibrate a scanner, learn the best ways to scan glass versus film. I don't know. It just became interesting to me, especially the person who I got them from. He was an old photographer for the La Crosse School District, and he retired. He was getting rid of all of his film stuff, and he had received the box from a lady named Harriet, and Harriet turned out to be the photographer's daughter. And the photographer, I didn't even say his name yet. His name is Arthur J. Cron.
Wow.
She passed. Yeah, she passed away. I think it was around 2008. It was somewhere between 2000 and 2010. I don't remember the date offhand. I was just surprised it sat in her storage in the basement for years, and then it sat in his attic for years, and then it just happened to fall upon me untouched for like 30 years from him and probably 40 years from her. So they were in surprisingly good condition, even though they weren't. You're supposed to keep them temperature sealed and all this other stuff, but surprisingly they were all in pretty good condition besides like a handful. I have a few that were broken. I've broken one, and there were a few that have like they got stuck to the boxes because of just moisture and whatnot, but I figured out how to clean those.
So you kind of just touched on this next question, but I mean, was there anything that's really sticks out of your mind that's really unique about this project that just has blown you away?
I think the fact that it's a decade's worth of work, like the fact that there's just this much, it's over 1,000 some negatives. I've currently posted just somewhere around 240 of them, I believe. That's kind of the thing that's insane to me is, I mean, I have my own body of work, but it's all digital. You can find it online, you can do whatever. But the fact that this many of one person's collection exists from 1903 to 1914 is insane to me. Most of that stuff would just be destroyed. It'd be in a landfill. It'd be broken, just in the trash. So the fact that it just exists is just a really cool concept.
Also, kind of following along since you started this project, it seems like you've gotten a lot of coverage and a lot of excitement about it. How does that feel?
It's been pretty cool. I didn't know how to share this project at first because it's just kind of a weird project. And so I ended up going into Facebook groups because some of the boxes have labels, some of the boxes do not, and some come with note cards. And so I can get like a base knowledge of what it is. But some stuff I'm like, I don't know what that building is. So if I know it's Milwaukee, I can just post into a Milwaukee Facebook group and I'm like, hey, what is this? And people get engaged. They talk to me about it. They're like, hey, here's these old city maps, who the photographer was, here's where he lived. This might be his house. And the first time I really got coverage was I went to one of the sets. It's like 100 and the Niagara Falls project, though, it's numbers 51 to like 130 something. The Niagara Falls photos that I found, I started posting those in 2 different Niagara Falls Facebook pages. And those people just went insane because Niagara Falls has gone through a very big shift in its time. There's a bridge I have that does not exist anymore. It collapsed due to ice. And that was like in the 70s, I believe. And then there's an entire chunk of Niagara Falls that doesn't exist anymore because it broke off at a certain point. Everyone wanted to help me. They wanted to know where he went. He went to a bunch of different towns around Niagara Falls. And then somebody shared it and a news person found it at WGRZ News in Buffalo, New York. And some of the photos are from Buffalo. So they made a news story about it. I got interviewed by them. And then all of a sudden my page went from like 200 followers to just under 900, which was a pretty big jump all of a sudden. I know that 900 isn't huge on Instagram by any means, but for me, I was like, oh, people are interested. So now I've expanded it. It's been on Instagram since the start. I did create a page on my website called mikemakes.com/the negative rescue project. And then I also recently created a Facebook page because there's a lot of older population who doesn't have Instagram and they don't know how to talk to me. So it's easier for them to just follow me on that page. And when I post photos, they're like, oh, this is this building, this is this person. Like, so it's really interesting because one is more for discussion, one is more for viewing, and one is just an entire catalog of everything I've done.
Yeah, I mean, it is an intensive catalog. You have everything from old news clippings to, you're putting stuff on maps where a lot of the stuff is located, ongoing updates, quite a big chunk of information that people can go through. I know you're a big fan of all things cameras. What's next for you? I mean, I could see a couple hundred cameras behind you. What's coming up?
Well, at least for the Negative Rescue Project, I'm currently looking at creating a book. There's enough stuff for at least the Niagara area that I can create a Niagara Falls book. There's been a lot of people asking if I would release something like that. I have to go back through the photos and do like a finalization of like cleaning and whatnot, because some of the negatives I've cleaned a bunch, some of the negatives I didn't clean as much, just depended on how interested I was in it. But so for me, that's kind of where I want to go. I want to do a book, maybe a series of books. It just depends on how long it takes me to learn how to make a book. And then, yeah. So, because that's kind of what I do for Mike Makes. It's whatever I'm interested in. So if I end up starting to go that direction, I'll start making a book. Currently, otherwise, we're just still kind of trucking on through with, at least for the Negative Rescue Project, I'm still just cleaning negatives, learning more things, kind of just expanding my, like, the awareness that this project has to other people. I recently started reposting in Milwaukee. And so people are all in arms, just being like, share more of this. We want to see more of this. Currently, I'm doing the Miller High Life Theater. It was the Milwaukee Auditorium when it was first built. And now it still stands. It's been through a bunch of renovations. Everybody that sees them, they're just like, I didn't know that this is when it started. This is whatever, like the buildings in the background do not exist anymore. So, and I could ramble on for a long time about that, but a book about Niagara Falls, a book about Milwaukee would be nice. Then going forward with just the rest of my camera stuff, I'm starting to do camera reviews about just weird niche cameras that I have, or just weird film that I have. And that'll be going on my YouTube eventually. I've kind of started that with the Negative Rescue Project, and I do want to do more Negative Rescue Project deep dives where I cover a chunk of some of the stuff that he took photos of that I can like research a lot more. Like I said, there was the Milwaukee Auditorium, there's Niagara Falls. At some point, he takes a lake trip where he goes up to Duluth and across Lake Superior and then over to Michigan. So that'll be one that I probably cover in the summer, because I do want to visit those places and kind of do before and after shots. I just have a ton still to cover. I still have, I think I estimated about 1,000 negatives, and I'm maybe 1/4 of the way through it. So
that's crazy. So you kind of mentioned you could basically just Google Negative Rescue Project and you come up the top searches, but if someone wants to find out more, what's the best avenue to kind of sprawl out from there?
I guess it just depends on whatever people use. On Facebook, it's just at the Negative Rescue Project. On Instagram, it's at the Negative Rescue Project. If you go on Google and just type in the Negative Rescue Project, you'll get it, like you said. However people want to communicate and help me out. If it's just look at the photos and comment on Instagram, cool. If it's on Facebook and you want to have a discussion, Facebook is it's a much better place to have a discussion, because you can leave comments and really reply and talk to a bunch of different people. Otherwise, just send me an email. People have been reaching out to me about expanding the project beyond Arthur Cron and doing other ones. And some people have been like, hey, I have a suitcase full of negatives. Do you want these? Currently, I'm not at the capacity to do that, but I think that's a very good avenue for me to go eventually. So email, Facebook, Instagram.
Lacrosse Local Podcast is a production of River Travel Media. Do you have an interview idea you'd like to share with us? Message us on Facebook at Lacrosse Local. Find out more about us at lacrosselocal.com, and you can subscribe to the Lacrosse Local Podcast on your favorite podcast app. If you like us, rate us 5 stars. We appreciate it.